Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, The Passing of Bhishmadev, Text 28. Tamartha kama moksham cha saho payam yatamune nana kyane tihashe seshu varnayam asatattvavid. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. Purport. Incidents mentioned in the Vedic literatures, such as the Puranas, the Mahabharata, and Ramayana, are factual historical narrations that took place sometime in the past, although not in any chronological order. Such historical facts, being instructive for ordinary men, were assorted without chronological references. Besides that, they happen on different planets, nay, in different universes, and thus the description of the narrations is sometimes measured by 3 dimensions. We are simply concerned with the instructive lessons of such incidents, even though they are not in order by our limited range of understanding. Bhishmadev described such narrations before Maharaj Yudhishthira in reply to his different questions. Text 29. While Bhishmadev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Purport. The perfect yogis or mystics can leave the material body at their own sweet will at a suitable time and place to a suitable planet desired by them. In the Bhagavad Gita 8.24, it is said that self-realized souls who have exactly identified themselves with the interests of the Supreme Lord generally leave the material body during the time of the fire god's effulgence and when the sun is in the northern horizon, and thus achieve the transcendental sky. In the Vedas, these times are considered auspicious for quitting the body, and they are taken advantage of by the expert mystics who have perfected the system. Perfection in yoga means attainment of such supramental states as to be able to leave the material body as desired. Yogis can also reach any planet within no time without a material vehicle. The yogis can reach the highest planetary system within a very short time, and this is possible for the materialist. Even attempting to reach the highest planet will take millions of years at a speed of millions of miles per hour. This is a different science, and Bhishmadev knew well how to utilize it. He was just waiting for the suitable moment to quit his material body, and the golden opportunity arrived when he was introducing his noble grandsons, the Pandavas. When he was instructing his noble grandsons, the Pandavas. He thus prepared himself to quit his body before the exalted Lord Sri Krishna. The pious Pandavas and the great sages, headed by Bhagavan, Vyas, etc., all great souls. Text 30. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings, and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men, stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else, and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. Purport. In the momentous hour of leaving his material body, Bhishmadev set the glorious example concerning the important function of the human form of life. The subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. Therefore, if one is absorbed in thought of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, he is sure to go back to Godhead without any doubt. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 5 through 15. Text 5 of that chapter says, "And whoever at the time of death quits his body, remembering me alone, and once attains my nature, of this there is no doubt." Text 6 says, "Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail." Text 7 says, "Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting with your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me. You will attain me without doubt." 8. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha Arjuna, is sure to reach me. 9. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who the world is, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and being transcendental is beyond this material nature. 10. One who at the time of death fixes his life between the eyebrows and in full devotion engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 11. Persons learned in the Vedas who utter Omkar and who are great sages in the renounced order enter into Brahman, desiring such perfection one practices celibacy. I shall now explain to you this process by which one may attain salvation. 12. The yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. 13. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, it will certainly reach the spiritual planets. 14. For one who remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pertha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. 15. After attaining me, the great souls, who are yogis in devotion, never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they've attained the highest perfection. Sri Bhishmadev attained the perfection of quitting his body at will, and was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes upon him. He wanted to see Sri Krishna for a long time, out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles. Simple bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhishmadev was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object, and by the grace of the Lord, had this opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. Text 31. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was free from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pain caused by the arrow wounds. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendentally to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Purport. The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhishmadev, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhishmadev was thus able to be transcendentally situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, and so also the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed from material contaminations. Bhishmadev attained all these transcendental conditions prior to his leaving the material body because of presence of the Lord. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings. That is the verdict of all Vedas. Sorry, I'm icing my arm because I'm injured. So. That is the verdict of all Vedas. He is the supreme entity and living and the supreme eternity. He is the supreme eternity and living entity amongst all the eternal living beings. Nityo nitinam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tam atmastam ye nupashyanti diryas tesham shanti shashvati nitaresham. From Katha Upanishad. And he alone provides all necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus he provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desire of his great devotee Sri Bhishmadev, who began to pray as follows. Text 32. Bhishmadev said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending on the material world, although from him only the material world is created." Purport. Because Bhishmadev was a statesman, the head of the Kuru dynasty, a great general, and a leader of Kshatriyas, his mind was strewn over so many subjects, and his thinking, feeling, and willing were engaged in different matters. Now, in order to achieve pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all powers of thinking, feeling, and willing entirely in the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna. He is described herein as the leader of the devotees and all-powerful. Although Lord Krishna is the original personality Godhead, he himself descends on earth to bestow upon his pure devotee the boon of devotional service. He descends sometimes as Lord Krishna as he is, and sometimes as Lord Chaitanya. Both are leaders of the pure devotees. Pure devotees of the Lord have no desire other than the service of the Lord, and therefore they are called Sattvata. The Lord is the chief amongst such Sattvatas. Bhishmadev therefore had no other desires, and thus one is purified from all sorts of material desires. The Lord does not become one's leader. Desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself that he gives his instruction from within the heart of a pure devotee who is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. Such instruction is given not for any material purpose, but only for going back home, back to Godhead. That's from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 10. For the ordinary man who wants to lord it over material nature, the Lord not only sanctions and becomes a witness of activities, but he never gives the non-devotee instructions for going back to Godhead. That is the difference in dealings by the Lord with different living beings, both the devotee and the non-devotee. He is leader of all the living beings, as the king of the state rules over the prisoners and the free citizens. But his dealings are different in terms of devotee and non-devotee. Non-devotees never care to take any instruction from the Lord, and therefore the Lord is silent in their case, although he witnesses all their activities and awards them the necessary results, good or bad. The devotees are above this material goodness and badness. They are progressive on the path of transcendence, and therefore they have no desire for anything material. The devotee also knows Sri Krishna as the original Narayan, because Lord Sri Krishna, by his plenary portion, appears as the Karna Dakshayi Vishnu, the original source of all material cosmos. The Lord also desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only the Lord descends on the earth and enlivens them. The Lord appears out of his own will. He is not forced by the conditions of material nature. He is therefore described here as the Vibhu, or the Almighty, for he is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. Text 33. Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. Purport. When Sri Krishna, by his own internal pleasure, appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental body are desired in all the three worlds, namely the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Arjuna is described here as the conqueror, and Krishna is described as his intimate friend. Bhishma Dev, on his bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra, is remembering the particular dress of Lord Krishna, which he put on as the driver of Arjuna's chariot. While fighting was going on between Arjuna and Bhishma, Bhishma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy Arjuna for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. Bhishma Dev takes this opportunity to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe, or a friend of Arjuna, because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees, who are related with him in different transcendental humors. While Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, sun rays glittered on the dress of the Lord, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhishma Dev. As a great fighter, he was relishing the relation of Krishna in the chivalrous humor. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas or humors is relishable by the respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. Less intelligent mundaners who want to make a show of being transcendentally related with the Lord artificially jump at once to the relation of conjugal love, imitating the damsels of Rajadam. Such a cheap relation with the Lord exhibits only the base mentality of the mundaner, because one who has relished conjugal humor with the Lord cannot be attached to worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by mundane ethics. The eternal relation of a particular soul with the Lord is evolved. A genuine relation of the living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of the five principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhishma Dev is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendentally related with the Lord. Text 34. On the battlefield where Lord Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hooves of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. Purport. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the five principal relations, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, that is, neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, filial affection, and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhishmadev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. It appears that Bhishmadev is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord, but factually, the Lord's body was not at all pained. Due to his transcendental existence, his body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are a complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So also it is stated in the Skanda Purana. It is said there that spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed, nor can it be dried up. When Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation, appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encaged, thus just to bewilder the asuras, or the non-believers, who are always alert to kill the Lord, even from the very beginning of his appearance. Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna, Ravana wanted to kill Rama, because foolishly they were unaware of the fact that the Lord is never killed, for the spirit is never annihilated. Therefore, Bhishmadev's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheists. But those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Bhishmadev appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord, because he did not leave Arjuna alone. Although he was disturbed by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though he was ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Sri Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love with the Lord, remarks very saliently in this regard. He says that the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the body of the Lord, directed by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there is a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting, as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee Sri Bhishmadev, was not at all mundane. Besides that, uh, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharpened arrows are misleading to the common man, but one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds caused by the sharpened arrows of Bhishmadev. The word Vibhidhyamana is significant because the Lord's skin is not different from the Lord. Because our skin is different from our soul, in our case, the word Vibhidhyamana, or being bruised and cut, would have been quite suitable. Transcendental bliss is of different varieties, and the variety of activities in the mundane world is but a perverted reflection of transcendental bliss. Because everything in the mundane world is qualitatively mundane, it is full of inebrieties, whereas in the absolute realm, because everything is of the same absolute nature, there are varieties of enjoyment without inebriety. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishmadev, And because Bhishma Dev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixed up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. Water break. Water drinking break. Rasoham Apsu Kayuntiya. Krishna is the taste of water. Rasoham Apsu Kayuntiya. I forgot the last of the verse. Rasoham Apsu Kayuntiya. Prabhasmi Shashi Suryoho. Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. Shabdike Paramnam Nishu. Probably. Yeah. Okay, continuing. Text 35. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Shri Krishna, Lord Shri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, text 21 through 25, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Shri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, "Here is Bhishma, here is Drona," and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be, but out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees, and Bhishma Dev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party, because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually, it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. Text 36. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Purport: the kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration or qualification, without consideration of qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, like Drona, Bhishma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties in the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was going to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but as a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time, because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Apparently, Arjuna's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted, conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to reestablish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. Okay, a little bit of Prabhupada nectar. Madhudvisha Das had been the president in Bombay ISKCON, but to Prabhupada he expressed his dissatisfaction, particularly in working with the Indians. He wanted another preaching field. He said that he considered the Indians to be very sneaky and tricky and that he didn't like dealing with them. Prabhupada said, I am Indian. Do you think I am very tricky? No, not you, Srila Prabhupada, said Madhudvisha. Actually, I am tricky, said Srila Prabhupada, because I have tricked all of you into surrendering to Krishna, and now you are caught and you cannot get away. Panchadravida Swami endured a serious bout of boils in India. The doctor said that he had come close to dying, and he had had to perform surgery on his back. When Panchadravida described his disease condition to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada looked at him and said, These diseases are simply imaginary. No, Srila Prabhupada, I really have them, said Panchadravida. He thought that Prabhupada was saying that the boils were all in his mind. He therefore showed Prabhupada a big scar that he had on his back from the surgery. Prabhupada touched the scar with his finger and said nothing further. Soon after that, in Bhagavatam class, Srila Prabhupada was describing how the sufferings of all living entities are imaginary, created by identification with the material body. Hearing this, Panchadravida realized the import of Srila Prabhupada's previous words. Yes, in the absolute sense, even the attack of boils was imaginary. Srila Prabhupada sometimes traveled throughout India by train, accompanied by his disciples. On one occasion, the train stopped in a field full of purple flowers. One of the devotees climbed down, ran into the field, picked some flowers, and ran back to Prabhupada's car just as the train started to leave. Then the devotees brought Prabhupada a bouquet of purple flowers as an offering of devotion. Prabhupada calmly accepted them, but said, Lord Shiva wears these flowers. The devotees were worried that they had made some guru aparad, but Prabhupada smiled and stuck one flower behind each of his ears. He widened his eyes and made a large grin. See? Playing as if he were Lord Shiva, with the purple flowers in his hair. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We will end here today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.